Hey, hi guys. This is Spirit Journey. How are you all doing today? Yes, I hope you're bright eyed and bushy tail. Yes, today is Wednesday. And, oh, forget the date. I forget what date it is. Is it the 10th or something? It could be the 10th. 10th of June, 2020. And I'm out in Bryant Park in New York City. It's on 42nd Street between 5th and 6th Avenue. And here they have a lot of trees. Let me show what it looks like. See the old trees all around. Yeah, I turn it back. Yes, I got here maybe, could have been an hour ago. And I do have my dogs here also. Yeah, you know I always have to get my dogs. Let me show them. Yes, little Lilac. Hey Lilac, say hello. Hey Lilac. That's Lily. Lily girl, say hello Lily. Yeah, I took her little cone off, but if she starts nibbling on her surgery leg, then I had to put it back on. And where's my little Lavender? Hey, Lavender. Let's see. That's it. Hey, Lavin. Lavy. Hey, Lavy. Yeah. Yeah, so that's Lavender. And those are my feet. Yes, I'm out and about. It is hot out here today. Absolutely hot. Let me put this out here. Put another table here. Oops. Yeah, it's very, very hot today. I was sitting over on the other side, and the sun was moving, or I should say the earth was moving, and the sun was really starting to beat on us. So I said, hey, let me find another spot, and I found this one. Really ideal. Yeah. So I'm just relaxing here today, and those of you who are looking at attracted to the title of this live stream and wondering, hey, what is this all about? Well, I ask you this question to my black audience, especially if you're coming from the USA. Have you ever noticed you wake up, do you feel refreshed or do you feel stressed out? Really be honest. How do you feel when you wake up? Are you wondering how you're going to survive? Are you thinking 10 steps ahead? Or you just basically mellow, you take everything one day at a time, um, you're real laid back. Ask yourself these things. I noticed today, I found a video on YouTube, and it was about black people who live in Japan. And I find that there is a big genre out there focused on black people overseas, not just in Japan, but all over Europe. I'm sorry, all over Asia. I'm just watching my dogs, making sure nothing happens. You okay over there, Lily? She scratches me. Okay, Lily. Let me, make, let me just make sure she's okay. You okay? Okay. I didn't know something they might get their toe caught, toenail caught in their hair. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, these are like children. You have to keep your eye on them at all times, you know? Even though they might be close to you, but sometimes they might put things in their mouth. You never know. So, anyway, back to what I was saying. I was watching a program. Actually, I found it yesterday, I think. And I watched one of the shows, and I was really impressed with one of the people that this YouTuber, yeah, it's a YouTuber, and I think he actually lives in Japan. I'm not sure where he's from. I think he might be from Jamaica. And he interviews other black people who are living, primarily black people who live in Japan. Yeah, you want to come up? Okay. Yeah, this is Lily. Yeah, you want to get on the camera? Look. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, he was interviewing a man. He's originally from, I think, Baltimore or Philly, and he had an opportunity. He went to college, and then he went into the military. And when he got out, he um, worked with like like journalism, things like that. And he was really talented fellow, handsome guy, and he talked about his life living in Japan. He arrived there, I think, when he was 21 years old, and he lived there ever since. Um, I don't think he's married, no children, and he lives a very uh, modest lifestyle. He does have a channel. Um, he does some gardening work. And I was so impressed with him. I would like to correspond with him, definitely. But there was something like underneath it all that how to say this? I'm happy for him. And interesting, in the interview when he was asked uh, about how he feels about Japan, and he said one of the responses he gave was that in Japan he feels free. He feels like a free black man. And when he said that, I understood. And I think that's why I put the title as such. How do you wake up feeling in the morning? Do you wake up feeling refreshed or you're stressed? And I understood his comment that even though he left the U.S. as a young man, he was 21, but to be born and raised in a place uh, and to leave, even though you're relatively young, because it holds your foundation of basically who you are as a person, your experiences. And he said he doesn't feel like he can just walk down the street and he doesn't have to feel yeah, he doesn't have to feel that when he's walking that he's going to be accosted by police officers or being mugged. He can get cabs, just basic stuff. And for someone to say that, like, to be your concern, how many people can say that? What other races do they have fear of walking and just being accosted by the police? And here in New York City, with the whole thing about George Floyd, who was murdered by um, Officer Chauvin, it's a real concern. People could lie on you and say, this person looks suspicious, blah, blah, blah. And you have plenty of those instances where innocent people accused, and then somehow they get killed. And I think about things like that when news of such comes about, in the media, it makes me very anxious. And it makes me very anxious because I have a lot of males in my family. And even one of them had gotten handcuffed by the police officer. He was just walking home, and there was a taxi in the area that was robbed at knife point, and the description was that it was a black fellow. Well, if you live in a black neighborhood, anybody that you see there, you know. And so they had a series of cars, a squadron, and one black male surrounded him, took out their guns, and then approached him. Anything could have happened, right? And so I always remember that. That happened in the 1980s, I think the early 80s. That's frightening. So, but especially if you're a black male and to um, walk around. And I had this one woman from church. I used to go to church, and she was crying. She was a grown woman with an adult son, and she was telling me the story about her son. And they live in Brooklyn, and the police officers keep verbally threatening him, saying, I'm keeping an eye on you, or blah, blah, blah. And they were just walking in the street. It was summertime, it's hot. People don't want to stay indoors. So they go out and just walk by. He had his girlfriend on his arm, and they were just strolling. So it's things like this that may make some black people, when they wake up in the morning, feeling stressed because you don't know what is going to happen to you. And you're very hopeful. And being a so-called Christian does not protect you. You can be as holy roller, you can wear a suit and tie, but someone accuses you, does an Amy Carter on you, you can be stopped by the police. You can be shot and killed, and then they ask questions later, right? And they make up their lies, the police. So, my listening to this black man in Japan, living in Japan for almost 40 years, I was happy for him, but I also felt a sense of sadness to him. He made a nice little life for him. I shouldn't say like that, but I'd say it affectionately, I'd say a nice little life. Um, he likes a simple life. Um, he does gardening. He's 59 years old. Yeah. So he's just a little older than me. Excuse me. He's just a little older than me. And as he said, like, he has more years behind him than in front of him. And his desire at this point of his life to be buried there, to be cremated, and just enjoy his life. Um, he has dinner parties. He learned how to cook, so he has neighbors, and he invites them over to his house, and he cooks for them. He seems like a real intellectual type, very laid back, very unpretentious, and I'm happy for him, but I sensed a sadness also, almost like he even said to the interviewer that he was hesitant to be interviewed. And I think, these are just my thoughts. But I was thinking, like, if you come from a nightmare, okay, you don't want to be reminded where you're from. You want to leave your past behind you. And so, you don't want to be reminded. You don't want people to dig up things. And I even know I had a friend and life was so challenging for her. Um, she was a very light-skinned Puerto Rican woman, and she decided for herself when she got married that she wanted to stay, she didn't want to be connected to anyone from her past, and that included her friends. And so she created a new life for herself in a very, very white community in Long Island, New York. And so I start to wonder, people like that who try to escape their lives, how could you really relax in the morning? Because you might be found out, so to speak, if you're trying to pass as a particular ethnic group. Um, and I think that's why they didn't have children, because you get a brown skinned child, but how are you going to explain it? So I think that's what actually happened. They didn't have children. But to live a life like that, that you say to yourself, well, we're not going to have any children, we're going to just live this and that way of life. I know for me, I wouldn't want that. For me, I want to live in freedom. Freedom for me is um, to feel like you don't have to make excuses for yourself. You're just you, and that you could express yourself. So, do I feel free? I would say in the past, I would say no, to be honest. Even though I love my apartment, uh, I have good health. If I need to see a doctor, I could go to the doctor because I'm a veteran, so they have, I can get free medical care. Um, but I don't feel free here. I don't feel free, I would say because I'm reminded who I am. And why I'm reminded who I am every day is because when I go outside, who do I see? Where I live, sorry, where I live, there's a lot of disparities of wealth. Even though I live in a very nice place, but surrounding me is a lot of poverty too. People live in these hotels. The government buys abandoned hotels, and they house like former inmates, uh, people who have substance abuse. They're down and out. And so that's a very strong element there. So a lot of the blacks that do live in my area, it's a certain caliber of black person. And there's a lot of drug dealing where I live. I see it a lot now. Actually, with this COVID virus, there is a lot of people still doing drugs. And I see that there's a lot more new homelessness. Now you have a lot of white people, poor white people, uh, walking around in the streets. Like before I put this live stream on, there was a country guy. He looked like he could have been in his 40s, and he had like a large brim hat on, and he was telling me that he likes to drink. Just, yeah. He was friendly though, and he liked my dogs. But yeah, there's a lot of um, more homeless people, and I mean, it's a lot of everything. I had yesterday when I was walking my dogs, there was a crazy white woman. At first, I thought it was a nun, but it wasn't a nun, because it's what the type of head covering he had on. Uh, and she was diagonally behind me, and then she was crossing the street going towards me, and she was like on the corner, I saw it from the corner of my eye, and then in front of me, diagonally in front of me to my right, was another white woman, and just something weird. Like she stopped walking, the skinny white woman, and she started urinating. She kind of like she bent forward slightly, and like she did it in case she was in the middle of the sidewalk, didn't try to hide and just let it out. I said, oh my, and then the woman behind me, the white lady, she was heavy set, and then it looked like she saw also at the same time I did the woman urinating, and then she walks in front of me, the heavy set lady that looked like I thought was a nun, and she says, how did she say it? You, I think she called me a stupid bitch, and she's screaming on top of her lungs. And I got a little startled, and at first I was wondering whether she was really in me because she looked right at me, right in front of me, or was she reacting because she didn't like to see the other white woman urinating on the street. Either way, and then later on, then she did that to a white fellow too. So she wasn't just singling me out. If it was for me that she was really venting at, she's just venting at the world. Yeah, so you have more of that. Um, yeah, I think my earliest memory about uh, police and black people, to this day, I still remember. I remember more how it made me feel. A young black man, and he was in handcuffs, and there was a white police officer walking him. I don't I was in some city. I'm not sure where I was, but it was a very busy street and everything. I was with my mom. It had a lasting impression on me. It, it didn't make me feel good. So with that image in my mind, and then seeing the black man from living in Japan and his story, he kind of reminded me of myself because I'm also military like he is, and he's very soft-spoken. Um, yeah, just some things that remind me a little bit myself, and I, I, I was able to relate to him about him saying, "When I wake up, I feel like a free black man," and I was so happy for him. So for me, about freedom, um, so you ask yourself, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning, black people? Also, I was a nutrition major. I had gotten my master's degree in nutrition, and so I had to read up on different statistics about different demographics and how they fare health-wise. And blacks are one of the lowest. Right beside the general black population, the worst off group is this a particular Native American Indian tribe called the Pima, Pima, the Pima Indians, and they have the worst health outcomes in America, and then really black people. This was, let's see, um, I think it was maybe 10 years ago when I saw that statistic. So who knows now what the new demographics of health is, you know? But so I think of myself. I said, um, would I want to go to a place like Japan? I don't know. I don't know. And I think it's because, I, let's see, I would say from my early, let me try to remember, like from the late 1980s to 2003, my life was very topsy-turvy. I had to move a lot, okay? Moving is stressful. Moving costs money. And I lived in like I lived in the Caribbean, I lived in Hawaii. Uh, it's different, it could be challenging. Surprisingly, uh, the worst place I've been to was the Caribbean to live in. And for me, um, it was hard. I lived there by myself as a single woman, no children. Um, it's difficult There was a lot of biasness, even though it was in the U.S. Virgin Islands, the island of St. Thomas. And I hope you guys could hear me. Yes. So you when see everyone is going to have their different experiences because of just who they are, male versus female experience. Let's see, whatever what color you are or what nationality. Um, for me, it was challenging being a single woman from the mainland. Uh, Black Americans are not like them. It's like a threat to them. You may hear things like I'm born here, things like that. Um, and there is, if you're an educated person from the mainland, yes, you will be selected for better jobs than the local inhabitants. And I think part of that is that they may not be trained, the general population. And the best of the crops, so to speak, they go to the U.S. mainland for school. See that? So every demographic is different. So the best of St. Thomas, they go to school in the U.S. mainland. And then the best in the U.S. mainland go overseas, like go to the Caribbean or Europe or Asia, you know? So that's generally how it goes. Um, I felt for myself that, I mean, part of me, like, I mean, I think I said this before, if anything happens um, to, you know, my mom, I, I would feel very badly. And I feel like, I probably feel like a big hole, big, piece missing. And part of me feels like I would like to move. But I say, well, where? Where would I want to move to? I don't know. I like nature. I like natural beauty. I like, I want to feel comfortable, but I don't want any extreme weather, extreme hot or extreme cold, you know. Um, and is it worth it, Um, is it worth it? I think with all the the racial climate right now, um, it was very intense for me. This COVID and the past month, yeah, I think it was about a month or 3 weeks with the killings of those black people. It was stressful. Yeah, I've never been under this much stress in my life. And so when I watched that video yesterday about the American black that's living in Japan, I said, honey, I want to join you. Yeah, that's how I felt. I want to join you there, man. It's, I don't wake up feeling refreshed. I constantly reminded about the disparities living in America. I mean, economically, I'm doing the best right now that I ever. I mean, I could buy anything I really want to eat. If I want to eat, I have the money to buy it. I have a really great deal with my apartment. It's a luxury building, and it's hard to find great places. Again, I mentioned just a few minutes ago that from the late '80s to 2003, I've been I had to move a tremendous amount of times, tremendous, and I said I never want to move again. I don't want that. So if I move, it has to be something that's going to offer me something big, I mean, if let's say I win the lottery or something like that, you get a house made or something in some other, I would be willing to do that, but still, moving is stressful. And now I have my little dogs. And I said to myself, I never want to be separate again from my pets. Yeah, I said never. No, these are my babies, and I want them always with me, wherever I live. So, Yeah, I see also um, many of the people that this YouTuber interviewed who live in Japan, blacks who live in Japan, many of them sound like they're from Jamaica. Yeah, definitely the Caribbean. And what was I going to say now? Caribbean people in the US, mainland, sometimes it could be a little stressful for them. See, I mean, the Caribbean has its slavery, of course, but most of the people there are all uh, mostly black people. While in the U.S., it's more whites than blacks, and so that has a different impact on a black population. And again, some of the West Indians, at least in the past, I came here, the culture shock, the culture shock of living in a place that's very racialistic. If you're from an island that everybody's black and brown, you don't wake up saying, "Oh, okay, I'm a black person." Everybody's the same thing. Everybody, basically. Of course, they have whites that live in the Caribbean, and they generally live in some other part of town. Okay, uh, it's a different. If it, I'm sorry, it's a different experience. And again, I lived in the Caribbean, and basically, people live with your own. You have a black governor. I think that a lot of the teachers are from the U.S. mainland. But basically, it's you know, everybody's black. But they do have colorism in the Caribbean. So if you're a fairer skinned black female, it's a lot of jealousies. Um, yeah, I would say that. I would say the more educated a person is, the more they're exposed to different types of people. It's not that problem, but the people who have less exposure to other types of people or their education, you're going to generally find that. Uh, surprisingly, I didn't know that it had that problem there. I thought, see, my belief was, coming from being born and raised in New York City, that the problem is racism for many challenges I have. But then to move to a place where predominantly everyone is black, everywhere you go is going to have its challenges. So you cannot run from yourself. And I think that's essential that I say that no matter where you go, you cannot run away from yourself. And I don't want to run away from myself. At a point in my life that it's about embracing yourself now. Um, to look in the mirror. And many of my videos, you see, I say to love yourself, love the person you see in that mirror. Because you cannot escape yourself. You have people who try to disguise what gender they are. And there was a movie like that. A woman who dressed like a man. And then at the very end of the movie, what's that? She gets a period. And she couldn't escape it. It was like a reminder, you are a female. And it mentally was destroying her. So I think life has told me, by watching different people's way how they express living in a racist country, in a racialistic country like the U.S., it can cause mental illness. And I think all with this COVID stuff, it's creating mental illness. And surprisingly, a lot of mental illness with white people that are here in New York City. People I've never seen before. You see them, they're all disheveled and they're really, really messed up. So, um, so with this film, this YouTuber who interviews blacks living in Japan. There was another key thing that was said uh, that one of the people being interviewed said. It was a man, and he said, when you come to a place like Japan or anywhere you go outside the U.S., he said, you need to manage your image. And I'm going to say that again. You need to manage your image. You need to manage your image. What is your image? Well, the new flavor word that I've been hearing now is called your brand. Your brand. Your image is your brand. But even more so, not only just manage your image, but you need to manage and maintain. The word maintain means to keep. You need to maintain that image. So the people who are there, like the man that I was really impressed with that's living in Japan, he stayed consistent. He said, make sure, pay your bills, do your taxes. He kept on repeating that about taking care of those responsibilities. And that's a positive thing. But he stressed it because I would gather that if you fall behind, you might have fees that you cannot pay, you can't afford to pay. But he said, it's like being orderly. And I like that in him. You have to be orderly. So if you like a particular location that you live in, when you got something that works for you, you need to manage what's keeping it, and you need to maintain that. So you make sure you do your homework, so to speak, on how to maintain what you have, because you need to protect yourself. What else? Another thing that I thought was, again, I knew with this other person's YouTube channel about being a black person living in Japan. Um, again, I only saw maybe 5 of his videos, no more than 5. Uh, I think what's important, what's not being discussed so far that I've heard, is about community. I mean, this one guy, he was saying that he has his dinner parties, things like that. But community to meet people from where you're from originally, your race, if you're American black, to have that other to know other people from that background, because even though you might be the only only black person in your neighborhood, I think for sanity, I mean, you may want to, I would imagine you want to be able to talk to someone, um, certain concerns you might have, if things change socially in your location, you need a community. And things develop slowly, like in a place like Japan. It's very, very conservative, right? Very conservative. Um, again, some people have never seen people with dark brown or black skin. They've never. So some people are afraid of novelty, you know. I mean, even a place like New York City, even though it has a lot of diversity, but people could be afraid of things that are different, you know. So I think in any lifestyle, it'll be important to have that foundation. And I would say for myself that I would like to. I mean, we have many. Yeah, hey, how you doing, Cam Powhatan? Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, I'm just discussing different things about waking up and how do you feel when you wake up? Do you feel refreshed, or do you usually feel stressed and you don't even know why? And part of that reason might have to do with the history of, you know, black oppression in America, the disparities, especially now with all these killings by cops. And you know, there is black on black crime, a lot of it. And I think all of this has to do with the stress that's put on us. The stress of being reminded that you're not accepted, you're not wanted. So, is the answer about leaving your domain, not your domain, leaving where you live? Just because you're born in a place doesn't mean you have to die there. Some of the people realized that that they lived somewhere else. Those people who were in the military, and some of these people in this program, they had their military stay was in Asia, and they loved it so much that when they finished their deployment and their time in the military, they move there. So, so with me, I had always wanted to leave the U.S. Yes, always. Um, for me, I wanted to move to France originally. I am part French. Um, and when I was in the military, we did go to France, and I loved it. I loved southern France. And I understood what that black man who lives in Japan said when he said, uh, I wake up feeling like a free black man. When I went overseas, outside of the U.S. influence or direct influence, I felt freedom. I had a smile on my face. And only when our ship, I was in the Navy, when the ship came back to the U.S., that's when the depression really started. I should say depression, my disappointment. I hated it. I didn't want to be reminded where I came from because I don't want to be reminded of the disparities that happened, that happened here. So, yeah, I wanted to move overseas. Um, and then the employment market got really bad in the 1990s, and I needed to find work. And I knew I wanted a warm place. At least I felt I wanted a warm place to live. So I chose Hawaii because it is part of the U.S. It's one of the states, um, and it's warm. And I figured all the tourism there that maybe I could find work there. And yes, I did find work there, but it was hard. What even though the physical beauty of Hawaii was phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. I loved it. I loved the the weather of Hawaii. The people in general are it's a very social, friendly. People wear shorts and flip-flops and a t-shirt, and I like that. But the economics, it's very expensive. You need a car, so I had to get a car, and I don't like driving, but I did get a vehicle. Um, but work was very hard for me, and I was getting depressed. Poverty stinks, and there was a lot of racism. People, people, people love reggae. They like hip hop and rap, but they don't want you there. They think it's cool and everything, but they don't want you there for jobs. Um, but if you got money and you got a girl there, you could, the girls wouldn't mind going out with you. But they use the money to support their relatives and all that. So be wise, black man, when you go there. Don't be giving away your money and have that money taken away for some other family. Support your own family. But yeah, you have to be careful about that, knowing why someone would be going out with you. And a lot of it is just economic. Money talks there. Um, I felt miserable after a while. I stayed there for close to 3 years, Hawaii. And I said, you know something? With all this racism that I'm experiencing, I said, you know, I miss not being around black people. So I came back to New York City. And what's really weird that the social climate here, there's so much separateness. And I'm not connecting with enough black people. I'm not from the street. I've never been in prison. I don't do drugs. And the element here, that's what it seems to be. And if you do find a middle class black person, they're not interested in black women. And I think that's sad. I met, this happened to me a couple of years ago. This is really something. I went to the West Indian Day Parade, and I said, you know, I hadn't been there in years. I said, let me just go. And so I took a long train ride over there. It takes about 2 hours to get there from where I live. And I met a lady on the train, a West Indian woman, and she invited me to her home and that we go together to the parades. I said, great. And she was to also meet up with a West Indian family there. And so we went there after her place. And this was only maybe 2014. So it's not too, so it's about 6 years ago. And in short, I mean, I had a nice time there at the person's house, the friend's house. And these three men came in, and they just stood out. They looked different. They didn't look like the other West Indian people. And I was just curious about them. So I was staring at them, not because I was interested in them, but I was trying to figure out who they were. And then one of them was like being very flirty, and he was asking me out. And one of the friends said, he said it in a funny way, but he reminded the guy that you're a married man with children, so cut it out. Yeah, so after that knowledge came out, I played it off, but I was a little embarrassed because this is at a party. So it was time to go. And one of them, the guy that warned the friend, hey, that you're a married man, you cut it out. He lived in the Bronx, and I lived in Manhattan, and so the train, I would have company, and then he'll just continue right up in the Bronx. So we were just chatting, and he says, just blurts out, he said, I like European women. So I said, okay. He made it very clear, yeah. And here he was someone I thought was he seemed like a really interesting guy. I'm not going to mention who he is, but he does some commercial work. He does parts modeling. And he is trying to break into Hollywood filmmaking. But here he's a black man. Well, his mother is a black American woman from the South, and his father is Middle Eastern, I think from Syria. And the two other guys are American blacks, And so I thought it odd. So he associates, he has black male friends, but he doesn't want black women. He wants, in essence, a white woman. And so when he told me that, we still continued talking. We still continued talking on the train, again for 2 hours. He was pleasant. And he's actually talking to me about his old girlfriend and X, Y, and Z. But either way, he did give me his business card. And I did contact him, and I never got a contact back. So I think it's sad that even though I don't have any children, I debt-free. I'm a college graduate. I have my master's degree in nutrition. I have my own place. I'm healthy. that sometimes people in the black community, because of oppression, that they feel that having somebody of a particular race is going to remove the stigma that they feel about themselves. Some blacks feel that all their problems will go away if they live in a particular country, if they had a white spouse or an Asian spouse or a Latino spouse, whatever, with anybody outside of their own group. I consider that type of behavior someone who is running from themselves. And again, you can run, but you can't hide because eventually it's going to come out. So I'm all favor of whoever who you like. I mean, if that's what you like, that's what you like. And if they like you, go for it. But to think that it's going to create a new you, it's a falsehood, That's not, that's an illusion because it has no substance to it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what this person is doing now, um, but he had an opportunity to marry this particular person in the past, this white woman, but he said no. I mean, he changed his mind, and other person, married someone else that has kids with them. Do you regret not getting married? Very good question. No, yes, I'm
Did
okay.
you get one already?
I'll get what?
One of the bags.
What's in the bag?
You want to take a look?
Um, I don't know.
No?
I'm okay, but thank you so much.
Okay.
Enjoy. Yeah. I don't know.
You're okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that was. Okay, yeah, let me get back to the question. Um, I don't regret not getting married because I think, I'm really glad you asked me this. I think I'm a free bird. I, ever since I was a little girl, I had an opportunity to see other women and what happens to women who are to get married or who are dating someone. And I asked, like, I know this one person, they're real boy crazy, and they used to pretend that they're going to get married, and they'll write their name, their full name, and the guy's last name, like they're getting married, and they write it all down, like, down a page, and just keep writing it over and over there, because that's what they want. The program is, you get married, and you get your husband's last name, and you live happily ever after. And as a little girl, when I saw this, I might have been 7 years old, 8 years old, I said to myself, how come she has to change her name? Why doesn't he have to change his name? And I became aware the difference between what's expected of men versus women. And I never liked that. Now, I'm not a so-called woman's liber. I'm not that. I think I'm a regular woman, but I, I question when things aren't the same. I mean, I'm old-fashioned at heart, but I didn't like that. And I didn't like that many women who get married, they're married to a house. They can't go outside really. They're stuck to a house. They have to cook, clean, and it's a lot of work. And the men usually have the freedom to go out with the gang, with the guys and hang out, and then come home when they feel like coming home. And so I said, I like my freedom. I like my freedom. I think subconsciously, I don't want to get married. But part of me is taught that you're a woman, you're supposed to want to get married and have children, you know. Um, but it's just a program that this is what you're supposed to do, and you don't have to do it. But if it happened, great. It is a beautiful thing, marriage and children. It's a blessing. But it did not happen for me. Um, but I say I really like my freedom. I like my solitude. I like to go home to my own place and I do whatever what I want. But I want community. What's happening in my life now is the lack and sense of community. I think that is very, very important. Um, so those people that I was talking to you about that's living in blacks who are living in Japan, where are they getting the socialization? That would be a big concern. But see, for me here, I mean, I got a great place, and not having your own place is very stressful. And I've been in situations like that. So I think that's why I'm very cautious about saying, hey, let me pick up and move. But a part of me does want to move, especially if anything happens to my mother. Um, but where would I want to move to? I don't know. Um, but watching this program on blacks in Japan, I ask myself certain things. Uh, is it worth it? Your time and money to find another place. I mean, if you just so happen, let's say, go on vacation and you fell in love with a place, I mean, hey, go for it, But if you just like me, I'm just here, and it's hard to travel with three little dogs. So I start to say, well, maybe, you know, rather than trying to look for another place, look for another country, why can't I build my life here? So I was writing down some things that I think blacks in America should really consider. Okay? Because see, you built America, and it really is a beautiful country. It really is. It just has a lot of rotten apples. Okay? These are some of the things that I think we need in this country, United States of America, that has to be addressed. And I hope in this racial climate now, in 2020, that this has to be um, considered. What's lacking, I think, in most black communities are these things. We need our own food source. What do you mean your food source? Well, that supermarket, is it owned by people that look like you, who are from your country, who speak your language? Uh, is it? What is the quality of the food? Where's the food, where does it come from? So you're at a handicap when you don't even know where your food source comes from. They could put anything in your food. And they are putting a lot of stuff in their food. The meat, they have hormones added to it. So at one time, young boys were developing breasts because they were eating the chicken, which had hormones added to it. Okay, so that's not good. The foods have GMOs. Now, the GMOs in the food could interfere with your genetics, maybe, and you might be prone to certain diseases. Okay, blacks have the highest disparities of health, lack of health. Who are the people who are dying mostly in New York City of COVID? Black people. So we're not in charge of our health. Okay, so where you live right now, you need to take charge of your health. And part of that is eating good food, healthy food. Knowing where your food source comes from. At one time in history, most people lived on farms. They planted their own foods. They hunted. They go fishing, right? But now blacks were forced up north, and they're forced to live in what they call ghettos or inner cities. Inner cities is really a large prison, but it's a prison without physical bars, in my opinion. And it was designed just like that, just what you see to cause conflict and pain. I mean, look around. Really look around at yourself. What do people, I've never been to prison or jail, anything like that. But what, what happens in prison or jail? People are fighting, cursing, right? They have aggression. What do you see people do in the inner city? Okay? So it's a prison. Okay? The other thing that has to be considered here, if you don't want to move abroad, the medical system and medicine. We're not in charge of our own health care. Uh, Living in the Caribbean briefly for 3.5 years, some of the local people there told me about uh, that that their grandparents knew about plants and herbs and treating sicknesses. Okay, that skill is no, thank you. They were telling me about cures and wellness. So how many people know anything about herbs and how to cure yourself or treat yourself with certain conditions? Okay, I'm sorry, this light. Sorry, that light was starting to get in my face. Okay, sorry. Okay. So when you're not in control of your medicine or medical treatment, you have someone who doesn't understand your anatomy or even mental health, and they're going to try to um, tell you what to do. Yeah, you do. You're going to have people outside of your community or historically had done things to your body. Remember Tuskegee? Tuskegee, what happens to Tuskegee, you have outsiders who lie to uh, black people from the rural areas, and they trusted them, and they were lied to also. And what happened? See, we don't learn from our past, and then we start acting like victims again, you know? So that incident should have taught us we need our own medicine and medical system as a means of self-determination and uh, health, okay? Let's see. Another thing I have here is clothing. The clothing that we have. You know, much of our clothing comes from China. Much of it comes from Asia. Who makes your clothes? You know, a lot of the clothing is not even cut to the type of body types that we have. So some of us have a very full backside. But if the cut is made in East Asia, it looks funny on your body. It doesn't fit right. We need people that could make garments that is designed for our body types. Okay? Yeah. And again, clothing is something that's visible and it communicates. What does the clothing you wear communicate? People should have their own clothing. Nothing wrong wearing any, other, ethnic groups' clothing, but you should have a sense, of what's yours. And it will help set an identity. Some people don't know who they are because it's so many mishmash. But they have a cultural identity through having clothing that's going to fit what you wear, you know. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. Well, some of the people are getting really close. Great observation. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it helps give you a sense of groundedness. identity. And it's not like putting on something like you do have blacks in the U.S., especially New York City, and they have the Afrocentric garbs. But it looks like something that someone else fabricated. It's not really them, but it's an adaptation based on living in a Euro-based society, you know? But something that's really truly you, out of, see, clothing is developed based on physical needs, such as if you live in the tropics, you're going to wear loose clothing, lightweight clothing. If you live in a cold climate, you're going to have something thicker, heavier that's going to provide warmth. Clothing should always dictate based on the physical climate that you live in and also the need. Let's say your occupation. You're going to be needing clothing also based on what type of work you do in that specific climate. And that dictates your cultural, social clothing development, you know? It just fits right in. It blends in. Your clothing, your environment, everything should just flow. And you're one with it, you know? So I thought that was important in developing a sense of identity. And if, if you don't want, if you choose not to leave the U.S., these are some things that you should consider so that to help you give you a sense of groundedness in who you are, okay, rather than trying to escape yourself. At this point in my life, I'm not about escapism. I'm about taking responsibility for who I am, for what I am. I am me, and I don't want to be anybody else but me, okay? The next thing I have here is housing, okay? Housing. Those houses you live in, they have people who live in what's called the projects. Does that cater to you, to your lifestyle? For one thing, it's all cramped in. What happens when you're all cramped in a space? You get, cranky, right? The air gets dirty. You're all breathing in the same stale air. Um, you need to have that sense of openness. And one thing that the impression that I got, like I was in the military, and yes, we did go to Egypt. And what I noticed with that part of Africa, and when I lived in the Caribbean, I noticed people whose ancestry is from warm climates. They're outdoorsy people. They're black people in general, I would say, and the planet. My understanding by some of the things I saw, that black people's habitation is not to be stuck indoors. Black people's um, habitat is the outdoors, like right now. You did all 20 years? No, I didn't. No, oh no, not at all. No, not at all. I didn't stay in the military long. I didn't retire from the military at all. Um, but how's blacks in general are outdoorsy people. Why? I mean, it's beautiful. Like right now, it's beautiful. So they don't seem to be, again, my impression, that they're not into things. They're into socializing, interacting with other human beings and nature, and the conversing. That's what I saw when I went in Egypt. That's what I felt when the bus was going into Alexandria, Egypt, and what I saw, you saw tons of guys, tons and tons of guys, just real close together, conversing. These are men that are real men. They're not about being stuck in some house, or um, it's not us. It's not us. But Europeans, whites, are into being indoors, they seem. They're more fixated about artificial lifestyles, living in a cube, You know, a house is a cube. Did you know that the cube, it, 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 it doesn't resonate with nature? The wind, when the wind hits a flat surface, it's putting a lot of stress in that house. It doesn't allow energy to flow naturally. You go to Africa, what do the houses look like? The huts. It's circular. See that the African, it's smart man, smart women. They go with nature. So when they get a house, it's usually circular. And they have a thatch roof that provides coolness. When I lived in the Hawaii, it was a what do you call it, a plantation house with a tin roof. Isn't that stupid? You fry to death. You fry to death in your own house. Foolery, foolery, foolery. You don't build a tin roof in the tropics, right? And there was even another place I live, a studio, in a really fancy building, brand new. It looked really brand new. The gorgeous, gorgeous landscaping. I couldn't even go home to my apartment after work in the afternoon, around 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It was an oven. Air conditioning couldn't even get rid of that, man. It was too hot to live in. So again, you have Europeans, whites, who are making unnatural homes to live in that you can't enjoy. Okay? So you have to build homes or housing based on the type of environment you live in. And even though the U.S. is supposed to have all this technology and knowledge, they don't use it because see they are money centric, not common sense centric. Okay, they're about what looks good, not about purpose. The African, the native, is about what is practical, what works, not about profits. Okay. Yeah, and that's why so many people are sick here because you're about money. You can't take money with you. It's a piece of paper, and now they're changing the monetary system and making it into a digital currency, a new form of oppression. Okay, it's not gonna be for your edification. No, not at all. It's going to be your new slave master, the computer. They want it set up in an artificial world via internet. Don't fall for it. Learn to love being outdoors. You got to get connected to outdoors. They want you to get, see, there is even a movie about that, about a world where you have your virtual reality glasses and you live inside that virtual reality. Yeah. And this one scene in the movie, they have a guy that has an IV in his arm with drugs, you know, stuff in it, so it could sustain himself, so he can spend his whole life behind a virtual reality glasses because he can't cope with reality. No, this is a beautiful world, beautiful planet, but it has been hijacked by outsiders who are unnatural, who go against the natural order of things here. A square building, oh come on. It holds an energy grid where energy cannot flow in and out. Don't you notice in cities that you notice it's more stress because the energy cannot flow, and it'll cause tension in your body. So it's important to have housing that is based on the physical need, based on the environment. Is it a cold climate? Is it a hot climate? You have to have something that's going to be uh, based on that. And again, you have your house to sleep in. The house is there for you to sleep in, but you live outside. You sleep indoors, but you live outside. That's a true native, okay? Yeah, but so blacks here, we're not building our own housing. We have houses made for us, and it's made like a prison. And see how the people act in the projects. They act violent. They're killing themselves. It's not white people going in there and killing those black people. It's other black people. Because it was a system created to resemble a prison. But you see where the whites live, it's all spread out. If they do live in an apartment building, it's usually spread out. It's usually bigger, right? They're not even basing it on their needs. Blacks in general have more children than white people, right? So they're not even considering that. They want you all stuck, and you can't breathe. Just like the guy George Floyd, he can't breathe. We cannot breathe. And when you cannot breathe freely, figuratively, your stress hormones increase. You become sickly. You have develop heart disease. Why do black people have all these heart disease, even though they got strong muscles? Because of stress, and because we're not eating the correct food, okay? The last thing I have on this list here is school, okay? Schooling is very important, or I should say education. Education is very important because you're teaching the next generation how to, for continuity. You want continuity where you live. Because when you go, who's going to take care of keeping the streets clean, making the clothes, everything. What you take for granted, what you live for, where you get your food sources, all that. You need an education that is going to, again, be based on your physical environment. So you notice like in rural areas, they're not really, at least in the past, they weren't so preoccupied with college. It was about the farm. I was told that 70%, what was that, before World War II, 70% of people lived on farms. Most people were rural. They grew their own food. They probably made their own soaps. And then after the war, World War II, things did a turnaround. Artificial food, the introduction to margarine, which caused much of our cardiovascular disease and diabetes and all that, right? Eating a starch-based diet is deadly. Processed starches, that is. It's deadly to black people. So you need a school. About getting your hair done. I briefly went to beauty school, and the school was in New Jersey. And I was at one time the only black person in the beauty school. Everybody there was European American, white people. And even though you're supposed to learn all hair types, it wasn't centered on black people, black hair care. And so I left the school because, see, solely because of what I look like, I would be required to do black hair. White girls don't want to touch black girls' hair. But a black person can touch and do a white person's hair, okay? So, because again, that's part of slavery, history of slavery too. The black women had to comb the white woman, the what do you call it, the mistress of the house, right? She had to comb her hair. So it's not odd for a black woman in the Americas to comb a white person's hair. But it's never the opposite. The white girl does not and will not comb a black person's hair. Even though the school, you have to get your license to legally do hair. And you have to be tested in all the different aspects, techniques. But once they leave, they're not going to do it. And I also worked in the salon as well. See, I believe like when I went into schools, the different schools I've been to many schools. Um, I'm a type of person that wants to see if I'll enjoy it. So yes, I was in the school and then I got a job while in school to get the practical along with the formal schooling. And I did not like the industry. It was very, very biased against blacks. And so, so for me, I said, this is not for me. I left it after 1 year. Yeah, I was there for about 12 months, the whole thing. Um, so schooling is very, so the whole point with that is if, if you go to someone else's institution of learning, you're learning through their eyes what's important to them. And if you go to a school system that is about them and not you, your needs will never be addressed. Okay? Why is it that you have schools here? You have tons of schools in New York City. We are not short of schools here in New York City. But the blacks here, blacks and the West Indians, they don't do as well because it's not designed for you. It's designed for you to fail. But the people from Asia, and many of them are darker than me, so it's not about color. It's about intent. And when you have a system historically that has an intention to hold you back and withhold information from you and not giving you opportunities, but you're giving people from other nations opportunity and not you, you're at a disadvantage. So you need a school that's designed for you in mind, for your personal excellence. I cannot stress that. You have to educate your own people. You have to. And learn your history. Now, people can make up histories too. I mean, learn history that's practical. Not that, oh, you know, the people who built the pyramids were black. How is that going to help you? Practical information you need. Learning about the pyramids is not serving you. You have people that live in Egypt. It's not even serving the modern day Egyptian. The only thing that how it's serving them is tourism. They get the camel, they bring the tourists there to the site, and then you give them a few bucks and they go back home. That's it. Doesn't serve them at all. And the only way it serves them is just that. It doesn't. It just takes up dust. But it doesn't really serve you. So learn the history that is practical, that is going to sustain you. Is your current school system supporting your needs to sustain your community so that it could provide a continuity in your environment? If it does not, those things have to be addressed. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those are 5 things. See. Oh, it looks backwards. Okay. It looked backwards on the thing. But yeah, so basically 5 things that I talked about. So it's a food source, medical, medicine, clothing, housing, and school. Those are the 5 major things that I was able to think of that has to be addressed in the black community and in actually any community, you know? So rather than feeling that you have to go to Asia or Europe or Latin America, why don't you stay here and have these things addressed for you and go to meet up with other black people and discuss those things. What are we going to do to be able to say we got the 5 things covered? Rather than wishing you were somebody else or being somewhere else, you're right here. Make it work for you here. Make it work for you. And I think right now is the climate that you can start it. Talk about it in your church. Since that's where a lot of black people in America go. They go to church on the weekends, on Sunday. Discuss it there. Or you have buddies outside that that you meet up in the park, whatever. Discuss those things. What are you going to do now? Since now the time is right to discuss it. The time is right now to talk about reparations. Reparations is what's going to sustain us. I'm sorry, man. Peace to you. Yeah, that's what's going to sustain you. Okay. Yeah. Discuss those things so you can be empowered. So maybe you can wake up next morning and not feel the anxiety. Again, the title of this, do you ever wake up wondering why you felt anxious? Well, I think many of the reasons why I may wake up and not feel refreshed but anxious is that these issues are not being addressed. Okay, you're being like a stranger in your own land. But those of you, even after hearing, listen to this whole live stream, if you still consider about going overseas to live, if it makes you happy, do it. Go for it. Go for it. Whatever what makes your heart sing. That's what it's all about. If it makes your heart sing, do it. Whatever works for you. But just remember, in the process, no matter where you go, no matter where I go here in the United States, if I decide to just move to a different state, or if I do decide to go overseas, you cannot run from yourself. You are who you are. So one little homework assignment I have for you guys and gals is this. At nighttime or in the daytime, whatever, when you're undressing to go to bed, look in front of the mirror naked and say, I love you. I love you, I love you. And that it will be a medicine onto you. Okay? Yeah, because if you don't love yourself, no matter where you go, you're going to be faced with that time, with running away from yourself. I'm tired of running away from myself. I love myself. I learned to really appreciate me. I'm not perfect. I got my quirks, but I have me. And so I want you to have you. Okay? So I know I've been on this live stream for a while, but I felt it was necessary. I'm tired of waking up feeling anxious. I want to start living. So yeah, I want to try to do more meditation, and do meditation also if you can. Yeah, I think the answer is really within, and this physical world is not all there is. There is another um, dimension. Yeah, it is more than just this. So yeah, tap into that too. And I've been asking my higher self, whatever we want to call it, I said, I need help. Uh, Send me answers. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to be continuing to look for answers and to try to keep, I want peace. I want to walk in peace. Okay, yeah. So, sorry, the power is getting lower. Yeah, so I'm going to be heading back home right now with my little pack there. Say hello, Lily. Excuse me. Yeah, baby. Yeah, so I appreciate you guys. Powwow. Yeah. So thank you for listening and everything, and all you viewers who will be watching this live stream in the future. Yeah, I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Again, do what your heart tells you to do. Use wisdom though in the process, and learn to love the person in the mirror. You cannot run away from yourself, okay? So thank you again for listening. Peace, love, and joy to you. Bye-bye.